Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, we are not yet sure who our next governor will be, but we are starting to learn more about how the winner will begin his term in office. We'll look tonight at the new governor's first few days in office and who is helping pay for him to get there. Bobby Jindal is still eyeing Washington and got a slight boost from Iowa. Meanwhile, Steve Scalise may have to stay where he is among congressional leaders. We'll also examine the Jefferson Parish President campaign, a poll that picked Bobby Jindal as the worst governor, and our Future Watch segment examines the status of City Park's master plan. And our plans are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Jeremy Alford, publisher, LaPolitics.com. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Stephanie Grace, columnist, The New Orleans Advocate. We go to Jeremy first. I understand you have some new poll results in the governor and attorney general, I think?
We've got hot numbers. These are high. This is from Triumph. This is a new firm in Louisiana that's polling for a group of subscribers that are independent of the race. And of course, this is a poll, so take it for what it's worth. This cycle, I don't believe any of the polls, but I think the trends are there. So this was taken Monday and Tuesday. It's got John Bel Edwards at 37. I think that's about the highest that we've seen him. He's going to finish first in this field. I mean, there's no question. David Vitter at 27, which is higher than we've seen him in other polls. I'm starting to really convince myself here that I think David Vitter's floor is probably around 20 or 21. Jay Darden is the big surprise here. It's at 15. And Scott Angel at 10. And those two guys, ever since Darden went up on TV a couple of weeks ago, they've been going back and forth. In the lieutenant governor's race, John Young has 30. He's leading the entire field. Kip Holden, the lone Democrat who's guaranteed to make the runoff, is at 28. And then Billy Nungesser at 22. So there could be some movement in that race too. The attorney general's race just keeps going back and forth with tight leads and bigger leads for Buddy Caldwell at 31. For the incumbent, Jeff Landry, 25. Ike Jackson, 24. Interestingly enough, not polled, Jerry Broussard-Belloni, who is the Democratic Party's nominee for this race. Her name should have been in that poll. I don't know why it's not.
So as you said, I mean, this is really like a snapshot in time, and the poll numbers have sort of been all over the place, and you're not that confident about polls this cycle. I mean, why?
Well, I mean, look, 2 weeks from now will be the eve of Election Day. So all of the campaigns, all of the PACs, all the parties have gone to overnight polling. I mean, things are going to be happening very quickly here. A lot of money's being dumped into the race, and things are changing. I don't know why the polls are all over the place. I think that it's easier for a firm to come in here and very cheaply get involved in the race through automated polling. It's very affordable. You can go on the website and poll right now with your own phone numbers. So
there are a lot of polls out there.
There are.
I'm getting calls constantly.
We're tracking them all at LAPolitics.com. You can go and look all the way back to December. I mean, there's a lot of people polling.
But still, the order in the polls that you gave makes sense to me.
Right.
If not the exact numbers, that they seem like if I was making up my own poll results, they seems like that would be right.
Well, I think pretty much every poll has had Vitter and John Bel Edwards in the 1-2 position, and Angel and Darden in the 3-4 position. And of course, it's a runoff situation, so really you just need to make one or two.
Right. There's a one outlier with Vern Kennedy's poll paid for by John George's and a bunch of other businessmen that had Angel up there in the 1 or 2.
But you use the word trends. You are seeing trends.
Trends, yeah. I mean, just like Errol was saying. I mean, if you take all these polls and you run the averages down the line, that's more or less what Stephanie was saying.
Yeah.
Right. And again, when you see John Bel Edwards at 37, which is a great number for him, he's the Democrat, and you're starting to reach that point where, is that the ceiling for a Democrat? Probably these days around 40%, give or take, and for him to get higher than that would be a tremendous accomplishment in this Republican state.
I don't think he holds on to that. I think he's
that seems very high.
Because the Republican Governors Association just dropped $1 million in Louisiana, and they are going after John Bel Edwards hard.
Obama.
and they're all looking at John Bel Edwards as this piñata just full of white registered Democrats, and they're all trying to whack at him to try to get those votes to fall off, and everybody's scrambling on the floor to pick them up. So I think some of them are going to fall off with these attacks.
And could that happen if somebody can make the case that Edwards can't win the runoff. Therefore, if you don't want Vitter, vote for one of these other two guys.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that.
And it might have worked if there were only one of them, but the problem is the
vote just gets too diluted.
It is. These are the Republican alternatives, and they're both pretty good candidates and have some appeal, and they're just splitting it.
Let's go over now to Jeremy. You had a piece about what the governor, whomever that may be, is going to do regarding special session. Who's going to call it like immediately, and who's going to wait, and what they're going to deal with.
Right. So that's been the recurring theme of this election, is that everyone wants to call a special session. Lawmakers are wondering, how long are we going to be in Baton Rouge? So I started talking to all the candidates and trying to drill down specifics, and they're different. I will say this, that David Vitter already has a team working on legislation. John Bel Edwards has better defined his plan. He said the heart of his special session call will be a plan to cap all rebates and credits, all of them, but not a blanket approach. He'll go in one by one, see how much he can get away with. We're talking real money. This isn't like some of the other plans where you're kind of nickel and diming, getting rid of some state cars and cutting salaries. I mean, you can end up making some real money off of this plan. But David
But there
Vitter,
will be tremendous opposition,
right.
corporate opposition, obviously.
So Angel, Darden, and Edwards all want to have 2 special sessions, and David Vitter is the only one who said that he will have 1. He's also the only one saying that he's going to call it immediately, right off the bat. Everyone else, John Bel Edwards said that he'll have both of his special sessions in February, maybe into March. The regular session starts in early March. So lawmakers are probably looking at 4 or 5 months, if not more, back to back. There are also constitutional amendments. David Vitter thinks he can get away with not having any. Scott Angel says that he will have constitutional amendments and may even have an early election and during the summer, so that he can pass a budget contingent upon the passage of these constitutional amendments. Jay Darden says that if there are constitutional amendments that are needed for the current fiscal year, that he'll look at an earlier election. So we're starting to see some of these plans kind of firm up for the special session that everyone's been talking about.
And we had another debate, a televised debate, but only with 3 major candidates, not 4. David Vitter was not there. So what do we see really heavily talked about this go-round?
Well, unlike the one the previous week, state issues and the budget. Boy, did they go after the budget. I think they probably listened to the criticism of the WDSU debate, and very good questions, I thought. The 3 candidates, John Bel Edwards, Jay Darden, Scott Angel, not tons of difference between them. They're all, kind of mainstream conservatives. Yep. Some things emerged. There was a question, would you consider raising personal income tax? Only Jay Darden said yes. I was thinking he had a Walter Mondale moment, but he very quickly
I was
said...
thinking no one was more surprised than his campaign team. He put his hand in there.
He very, very quickly said, only because I'm considering everything, not saying I'm going to do it. There was some talk about some specifics with getting rid of tax exemptions. There was some talk about maybe the horizontal drilling exemption, which is for fracking, which I think is possibly going to come under fire. All 3 candidates actually endorsed the public-private partnership for hospitals that under Bobby Jindal, although they all said it should have been done better, of course. These guys get along really well. That's the other thing that came off, that they're, these are kind of government pros, and they've been traveling around the state together, and they all kind of think David Vitter is the one who's playing dirty here. So when it's just the 3 of them, there was really, I think, a lot of camaraderie and affection, and the attacks all were aimed at David Vitter, who is... His Twitter account was active during the debate, I'll tell you that, but he was not there.
Okay, one thing I wanted to ask both of you. I mean, both of these other 3 candidates make a point of the fact that Senator Vitter is not at these debates. Has been missing them, not at these televised debates. Do you think that's getting any traction with the voters? Do they care?
I don't think so. We've seen this before. We saw it with Bill Cassidy,
Bobby Jindal,
who won senator. We saw it with Bobby Jindal, who won governor. And look, he's going to be in 2 debates by the time the televised debates at the end of the cycle. He put out a press release earlier today saying that he's going to be in 3 debates next week. Well, only one of them is televised, but so he's showing up at forums.
Right. But I kind of wonder if it somehow feeds into, you're seeing so many attack ads that he is sponsoring, and you're not seeing him, that it starts to feed into this vaguely negative vibe. Maybe.
I also think this may be one of the only times this year where we're going to say that we want to hear more from our politicians rather than less.
True. Okay, let's talk about our outgoing governor, Jindal,
Yes.
who still has presidential hopes.
He does.
And in Iowa, he's doing a little better.
A little better. If you follow his Twitter feed, you would think he was doing a lot better, but in fact, he's doing somewhat better, I would say, and they're getting some encouragement from this. There was an NBC poll that came out that they are touting, and it has him tied for 5th place in this large field with 6%, along with Marco Rubio and Mike Huckabee. That's way behind Donald Trump and Carson.
But that's moved up from the
far
1%.
bigger than the 1%, 2%
It is.
he was
Compared to,
at. Yes.
that sounds pretty good if you're comparing it to 1%. And he can say he's tied with Marco Rubio, who's kind of one of the candidates of the moment in Iowa. He is spending tons of time there. Only Rick Santorum, who was a previous winner in Iowa, has spent more time there and who doesn't have a full-time government job. So he's doing town hall meetings. He's trying to hit all of the 99 counties. The other reason I think they're getting some encouragement is these town hall meetings go very well. He gets good crowds, and he's really good in this format. People like him. He's smart and engaging. And you know, when we hear him, we hear the same things he says everywhere. But if you're hearing him for the first time, he comes off. I think I've gone to some of them in New Hampshire and Iowa, and I've interviewed people, and people feel like he's very genuine. I mean, these are people who are obviously interested in him, so they, you know, it's a self-selected group. So. You know, I think the thing is, Iowa, you don't need a lot of money. It's Christian conservatives do very well there. He's following this Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum model to be the kind of conservative alternative to whoever will be the mainstream person. This is a plan they devised before the whole Donald Trump thing, so how that fits in is a little confusing.
He's also disclosed his tax plan. If you can just touch on that briefly.
It's very, the point they're really pushing is that everybody will have to pay some income tax. The argument being that, you know, everybody should help carry the cart a little bit. Of course, lower income people pay sales tax and Social Security tax, so this kind of idea that they don't pay any taxes is not really accurate, but that's the line. So it is very big tax cuts for upper incomes, you know, pancake the brackets, get rid of corporate income tax, get rid of standard deduction. So some controversial things.
So the numbers are moving up for him, so I guess we should plan on continuing to see more of the same, I guess, the way he's doing in Iowa.
I gotta say, I think he's probably going to stick around until Iowa because, you know, you say maybe he can't win, but look at this field. I mean, you can look at a lot of them and say they can't win, so you just don't know.
Okay, well, this whole cycle so far has been sort of a puzzle anay,
Exactly.
so we'll just see how
Iowa's
it's starting to
also
fit in.
a different type of politics. They call them the Iowa caucuses because they're a series of small meetings rather than one big statewide election.
Right. So you don't even really need that many people. This is one of the things that Jindal Camp said early on that what was the number, 26,000? Yeah, they came up with a number of votes, and it's a very small number because, you know, you have to go out on a snowy night in Iowa and stand in, to a schoolhouse.
If that's the crowd you do well in, then
it
behooves you to go.
Well, I'm going to sort of shift it right now. No snowy night here, that's for sure. We're going over to Jefferson Parish politics. And first off, let's take a look at what's happening with the president's race. Errol.
Well, because, first of all, John Young was term limited and he's running for lieutenant governor. That's opened up the parish president seat. The two main candidates are Mike Yenny, who's been the mayor of Kenner, and Elton Lagasse. I got to tell you, both of these men are qualified. I mean, Yenny's been mayor of Kenner. Lagasse's had a career, has been on the school board administrator, a council member, and so they both know their way around government circles. That's not what the issue has been, though. That the issue really goes around names. Mike Yenny carries the name of a very prominent family in Kenner. His grandfather, Joe Yenny, was a beloved reform mayor of Kenner, and then was elected parish president. Served as parish president in his second term, died in office, but was so popular that his son, Michael J. Yenny, was elected parish president, and Mike Yenny, J. Yenny, also died in office. But the Yenny name was very, very popular, and had a good reputation.
It's the name on the parish building.
That's right. Yeah. Mike Yenny, the candidate here, is
the mayor of Kenner.
Who's the mayor of Kenner? Well, as was his grandfather. Okay, his parents divorced, and his mother was the Yenny, and he changed his name to Yenny, which has a perfect right to do. Okay. Now his opponents say, well, isn't that kind of convenient? I mean, that there's certainly a lot of political expediency, especially if you're a Kinder politician, to be named Yenny. And so that issue comes up every time he's run for office. Hasn't held him back yet, but it becomes a factor. That said, the polls still seem to show Mike Yenny leading the election. Right. But they're both qualified people, and you just hope it doesn't get bogged down, too much on that particular issue.
Well, you don't really have, in these parish president races, you don't really have ideological issues, so you often do end up talking about personality and style. One difference in style also is age. Mike Yenny is, I think he might be 39 or so. Elton Lagasse is in his 70s. So there's a real generational difference. And I think you hear people talk about, energy and youth when they're talking about Mike Yenny. Also has a lot of establishment, they both have a lot of establishment support. Jefferson Parish has a kind of a history of taking these guys who've been on the council for a long time and saying, we're done with them, let's move on. When they went to the 2 at-large spots, a bunch of the district councilmen who'd been on forever ran, and the voters said no to all of them and elected John Young and Tom
Well, the
Capella.
job was really created many years ago when Jefferson Parish changed from the old-fashioned police jury system to a council. The job was really kind of seen as being a bureaucratic, administrative type of job. And originally, the parish president didn't even have the veto power. They have that now, but
it's still a relatively weak job, though.
But it was designed so that the power was in the council. But certainly, the president has the bully bullpen and can get out there and lobby and negotiate for things.
And look at John Young. He is a favorite maybe for a statewide office.
Okay,
very
let
effective
me
at that.
have you touch real quickly on the at-large.
At-large. So there are 2 at-large openings. One was already settled because nobody qualified against Cynthia Lee Shang, of course, longtime councilwoman's daughter of Harry Lee legend, who moved up from a district council spot. The other one's being very heavily contested. Chris Roberts, the incumbent, against Louis Kangemi, another former Kenner mayor. Kenner mayors, they really, that's really a stepping stone. You had Aaron Broussard come out of that spot too. And Louis Kangemi, of course, has been on the council, another big Jefferson Parish family that goes back many years.
And then Jimmy Lawson also, who
Jimmy
is
Lawson,
a
another
long-time
former councilman. Yeah. This one's gotten a little nasty. It's over whether Chris Roberts paid his taxes. The things that come up, there are always these kind of currents, East Bank, West Bank, and Jefferson Parish, but it's sometimes a little hard to put your finger on what the issues are. It's kind of very factionalized, and I think this is an example of that.
Kenner is, though, the largest political entity in Jefferson Parish. If Metairie was incorporated, Metairie would be the largest entity, but it's not incorporated. So there's no mayor of Metairie, there's no Metairie councilman, and so being in politics in Kenner is a good stepping stone in terms of Jefferson Parish politics.
Okay, we're going to move away from Jefferson Parish and we're going to move into City Park and go over to Don and Future Watch.
All right, well, we are talking about City Park's master plan, which was adopted in 2005 in March. So obviously that plan, that $115 million original plan, changed a whole lot the same year it was adopted when Hurricane Katrina hit, and the $115 million plan with the damage to City Park rose to a $161 million master plan, all with a timeline of being completed by the city's birthday in 2018. They are well on the way to completing the plan and raising the funds necessary. $122 million have been raised or are being raised and spent as we speak. The things that are complete are things like the new tennis complex, the city putt-putt courses, the Ladybug roller coaster being revamped, and all of Storyland being revamped, the Great Lawn being built, bike paths, roadways, stadium renovations. What's underway right now is a new entrance to the Botanical Gardens on Victory Drive. You go into the entrance, you go to the Botanical Gardens one way, you go into Storyland the other way. You'll go through that eventually into the new Enrique Alford Sculpture Garden, which has been sponsored by the Hellis Foundation. It's paid for. It is scheduled to open the end of October. So all those beautiful sculptures, you and I were talking pre-show about that, will be on display for the public.
In one spot.
End of this month, in
that's
one
wonderful.
spot,
That's wonderful.
through
Those
the
are beautiful
Botanical
pieces.
Garden, and ultimately the Botanical Garden and that Sculpture Garden will be connected by another area that can't be worked on until May because a Chinese light display is coming in the first quarter of this year. It's a display of Chinese lanterns in the garden area, which should be quite beautiful, but that's putting off the completion of that area. The peristyle has been renovated. The whole front of Best Off Sculpture Garden to Marconi Drive has been renovated. Visitorship to the park is way, way, way up, apparently. say in 2014 there were 1.1 million unique only one-time visitors to the park, and people average 13 trips a year to the park. So they say about 13 million visitors to the park every single year. The new golf course should be finished in early 2017, and in early next year, then the golf course clubhouse and maintenance office will go under construction. A splash park area is going out for bid now. Construction should start next year, and it'll open in 2017. So lots of things to be opened along the way. One of the things that wasn't on the original master plan, there was a new museum area, but it never said what museum. The Children's Museum will be moving to City Park. Construction should start in the first half of 2016, and it's expected to be ready in 2018 as well.
And where's that going to be in the park?
Oh,
do you know exactly?
Goodness, I don't know. I can't pick.
Roosevelt Ball around there, do you know?
Errol might know the exact area, the new museum
the
area.
Children's
It's kind of back behind, I think.
If you know where it's around the Christian Brothers, down the road from where Christian Brothers
I
is.
get lost without a map in City Park.
Those roads are all.
It's a very large
It is a
park.
big park. Yeah, but I know the area you're talking about.
And one thing that's kind of awkward to admit, but they say, were it not for Hurricane Katrina, they might not have gotten so far. There were $45 million in damages to the park alone, but Katrina put the park kind of in the public forefront. It made it a whole lot easier to fundraise.
And it is really a beautiful, beautiful park. Kudos
Take
to Bob
advantage
Becker
of it.
and his team. Okay, let's talk about Steve Scalise real quick right now. He was aiming for GOP majority leader, but things have changed.
Right, so Hell Boggs never rose above majority leader due to a plane crash. Bob Livingston never got past Speaker-elect due to Larry Flint, and now Steve Scalise is not going above majority whip because of the conservative sect of the House.
At least for
McCarthy. Yeah, McCarthy's not going to run for Speaker. That doesn't open up the majority leader spot, so Steve Scalise's plans have changed, but it really speaks to the growing influence of the conservative faction of the House to which Scalise helped give rise. So it's called the Freedom Caucus. They broke off of a group called the Republican Study Committee that Scalise used to be the chairman of, and they're really throwing their weight around with these elections, and I think that's a large part of why it got derailed. Although there's been some stories here lately saying that McCarthy may have had some skeletons in his closet.
Bob Livingston problem, people are saying.
Right, and he got Livingston, but so you didn't want to drag everybody through that.
So Scalise remains whip. Is
Right.
it possible that he would seek the speakership?
No, he's there's already word being delivered through back channels that he may be supporting Paul Ryan. But I think the speculation immediately back home was he's going to run for whip. But I think on the Hill, you go talk to
speaker?
folks, and
Yeah.
they're saying, look, he's young. He can bide his time, and he can try to break the curse a little bit later.
And he's probably better off doing that, I'm going to say.
Probably so,
You know,
yeah.
getting out of this really heated environment.
Because Paul Ryan is still saying no, last I heard. I mean, he's been pretty
Although
firm
there are
about that.
conversations going on, we hear.
Yeah, who knows?
So what do you
1
think?
week ago, we were sitting here, and we were all expecting an election to be done by now.
Yeah, yeah.
So likely, the Congressman Scalise will remain whip. That's what it
Looks
sort
like
of
it,
looks
yeah.
like right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
thanks a lot, Jeremy. Okay, there was a poll that the Advocate and WWL
Yes.
released about a week or so ago, and one of the questions was your favorite governor, your
And
least favorite governor, and the one who was the worst. Errol.
Well, I was just kind of thinking about this. Obviously, no one knows the correct answer for this was out of the last 6 governors, so it didn't go back to Governor Cadillac or something like that. Okay, so of the last 6 governors, and leading, Judge the best was Edwin Edwards, and a lot of people were surprised at that because of having served 10 years in
criminal
jail
issues.
and all that. But he did accomplish a lot. I mean, in many ways, Edwin Edwards was the most effective. In his first term, when he passed the new state constitution, he could have quit right there and gotten a statute built to him right there, because that was quite an accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
But the other question about the worst governor, and I don't know who the worst governor is, but from the polling came Bobby Jindal. And I've been thinking about this, and I will say this about Jindal. In a sense, as a personality, I think he's been dismal. He hasn't really reached out to people. As a candidate or as a governor, he's been a very, very private person. The fact that he's perceived as always being campaigning, that makes people think, well, he cares more about Iowa and New Hampshire than he cares about us. I will say this, though, that I think one day when they look back at the Jindal administration, they'll say, at the very least, it was an important administration, because I think he did some work that perhaps needed to be done at some point, like Louisiana, the populous state that started, we know, Huey Long in the 1920s, and all of the spending and all of the big money and all the money. There's a lot of there were a lot of painful things that happened in education, but a lot of hard questions that had to be answered. And
Well, he
also,
dismantled the charity system. That's major.
yeah, also the
Major.
hospital system, all of which were painful, but all of which
History might have a kinder lens.
yeah, all of which needed some thorough analysis. And so I think he built a base that future governors can come back and build on. He did the dirty work
Right.
and say, well, maybe we can improve this. And so I wouldn't call him the worst governor, or if you did, I'd put an asterisk by it, because I think there are some things that he'll be remembered for. But boy, he never really engaged with the public at all.
And feelings are very strong now, so it's probably partially a measure of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he certainly didn't engage that much either with the media. I mean, the media had a hard time getting through to him. He was not one who held a lot of press conferences, certainly open press conferences. And he was, the criticism was he was out of state so much, too.
Well, you know, when he first broke into public view was Mike Foster, and you know, put him in charge of the health system. He was 24 years old, so everybody was talking about this young genius and what he's doing. And at the time, I think Louisiana really wanted a young genius, right? And someone who wasn't making a lot of waves. And so he was the sort of person that Louisiana was looking for at the time. And so he had just a tremendous political success.
Well, he was immensely popular when he basically didn't have opposition when he ran twice.
Was embraced by the Republican Party, was easily elected to Congress, and could have easily gone in that track too. He had one setback the first time he ran for governor when he lost to Kathleen Blanco, but had a very impressive campaign. But able to see, unlike a lot of politicians, he was able to go forward without really reaching out to the public very much.
And of course, though, he's leaving office with the state in a real budget mess, and something that the next governor is going to have to tidy up, even with all of the changes that he did make. So,
and that's happened before too. A lot of governors have faced the same thing. Yeah.
Well, if you look at these governors around the country running for president, really a lot of them are very unpopular at home. This is not at all unique. Look at Chris Christie, Scott Walker when he was running.
yeah, it's a difficult time all around, not just for Louisiana. Okay, time to look ahead. Errol.
Well, tonight the Pelicans have their second preseason game of the preseason. They're playing Atlanta and Jacksonville. On the 24th, they open up the regular season on the road against Golden State in Oakland. And then 2 nights, or on the 31st, they opened up their regular season against Golden State. So 2 of their first 3 games are against the defending NBA champions. So it's appropriate they open up here on Halloween night, because that's pretty scary.
And the other thing is their new coach was an assistant coach for that team last year.
Even I knew that one, Stephanie. Right, Jeremy?
I'm going to be looking closer at the legislative elections over the next week, zeroing in on the incumbents. I think there are a very small handful of incumbents that have real competitive races, and I'm interested to see just how many of them get knocked off and how many of them keep their jobs. I tend to say right now it looks like most of them are probably going to survive and make it back to the legislature.
Okay, we'll see. Don.
Back to City Park, sort of. Get ready for more road construction. Starting in December, the Wisner Boulevard overpass will be dismantled to be rebuilt with a biking and jogging path and proper lane structure and all that fun stuff. So there will be detours that will last for about a year.
Another way to reroute, to figure that one out. Stephanie.
We've been talking constantly about Republican presidential debates. Next week, the Democratic debates start. Tuesday night on CNN, you get to see Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And if you've always been wondering about that Lincoln Chafee guy, you get to see him too.
Joe Biden, would he be able to make that debate?
It's interesting. Joe Biden, they're going to let him in up until the last minute. They're going to let him in if he wants to show up.
No kids table.
Yes,
right?
No kids table.
Oh.
All right, thanks you guys for being here. Thank you all for joining us, and we want to see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.